Close, getting close.
Are you holding my camera properly? Swerve, girl.
Stop, both of you!
Yours will surely come.
Hi, Mom.
My parents asked if their grandchildren could visit them for a week.
Here we are.
This is where our mom grew up. I've wanted to spend time with you for so long.
Miss you guys!
Mom, we're having a great time.
I have not seen your Nana this happy in years. Bedtime here is 9:30. It's probably best you two shouldn't come out of your room after that. See you in the morning.
9:30?
9:30.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Lobby, a podcast that lives here on the Rail Lovers podcast feed. My name is Marley Silverbrand, and we are continuing our M. Night Shyamalan retrospective series with M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit from 2015. This film stars Olivia DeJonge, Doxenbold, Deanna Dunagan, Peter McRobbie, and our queen, Lord and Savior, Catherine Hahn. And joining me today, you probably heard him giggling at the little Catherine Hahn joke that I had, so thank you. But joining me today is a movie enthusiast, movie lover, and just a really good friend, and an M. Night Shyamalan sicko, just like myself, is Andrew Herrera. Andrew, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to The Lobby.
Thanks. I am very glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. It's been a while since you've been on one of my podcasts. You were actually an original fan and just original guest back on the Water Cooler podcast, but this is kind of like the first time that you're back on the podcast where we're talking about a movie. And what a movie to kind of like kick off this discussion with M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit.
I know. I love this movie from the minute it came out.
And I've told you this multiple times via text and just like DMs too, that this is the first time watch for me. From this entire series, this is the only M. Night Shyamalan film that I haven't seen. I've seen all of his other ones, and this is
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
This is the one that I skipped in theaters. And after watching this, I wish I saw this in theaters because this is truly a cinematic film.
Yeah.
But before we get into our discussion on The Visit, Andrew, what's your history with M. Night Shyamalan?
Well, my history with M. Night Shyamalan doesn't start out too happy, to be honest. It's The Sixth Sense, obviously, his first film. The previous year, my brother had died. So the next year, family and I, me, my mom, and my dad, went to the theater in 1999 to see The Sixth Sense. And after having, experienced like my brother's death and the funeral, and then, I was only, I think 9 or 10. I would think I was 9 years old. And so a 9-year-old seeing just sort of live, I guess, dead people on a big giant movie screen, it kind of messed me up for a little while, and I didn't watch it for a long while, probably until I was an adult, just because it terrified me as a kid. And I remember I had to change bedrooms because I was terrified. I felt like I was seeing things, like Haley Joel Osment in the movie, I felt like I was seeing dead people and it terrified me. Growing up, I learned to appreciate horror more. And so I revisited it. And it's honestly, to this day, the best M. Night Shyamalan movie. And I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, it's The Sixth Sense is definitely up there for me. I haven't really, when I'm done with the series, I haven't really thought about actually doing like a full Shyamalan ranking, just because from doing this series, it's honestly kind of hard to put like one single movie above.
Yeah.
Just because especially something like The Visit, this is like, it's totally like kind of like out of M. Night Shyamalan's wheelhouse, but it's also kind of like it's like almost a perfect M. Night Shyamalan film.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like it has elements of his best films. It has elements of The Village, and it has elements of
The Sixth Sense. It has elements of that, and then Unbreakable as well. Like, you have like kind of like that childlike perspective that M. Night Shyamalan kind of puts in all of his movies,
Oh
because
yeah.
I've said this multiple times throughout the series is that M. Night Shyamalan loves to use kids as kind of like this surrogate throughout like throughout his entire filmography, just because he sees them as innocent, as not seeing like they're not familiar with the world and are just kind of experiencing the world for the first time, and to have that as like an audience surrogate, or just have like having them as like a narrator through his movies, it's an interesting way for the audience to experience the story, which I find really admirable, like about M. Night Shyamalan, that he uses kids in this way. But
Yeah, I think what it does is, well, it not only terrifies the kids even more when they watch it, but it also, like, when you're adult watching them, it like turns you back into a little kid, which sort of makes it more frightening, you know? Like you're
Mhm.
back to being a little kid in the audience, in their perspective, in that kid perspective. And, you're just terrified again because you're like a kid again, watching one of his movies.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like whenever I do rewatch any of his movies, I always usually end up rewatching like those movies like when I'm in kind of like a dark place in my life. And whenever
Yeah.
I do rewatch one of them, I'm always just kind of like amped up to like make something or create something or talk about them, just because he kind of like lights a fire underneath me. And that's why I'm doing the series, and also just why M. Night Shyamalan will continue being one of my favorite working directors today. Yeah. But we're talking about The Visit today from 2015, like I said. And this is a film that like I said, it's a first time watch for me. I didn't watch this movie in theaters. And just mainly because I was still kind of recovering from the atrocity that is Last Airbender and After Earth. I don't necessarily think that those are bad movies. I just think that like, they are totally out of M. Night Shyamalan's wheelhouse, and like, he felt, like, a little bit out of his element there. So,
Yeah.
I wasn't really ready to jump into an M. Night Shyamalan film, even though, like, the trailers that I did see from The Visit seemed very intriguing. But this is the first collaboration that we get from M. Night Shyamalan and Jason Blum, or, shoot, what's the studio's name? I'm just blanking of the
Blumhouse.
Blumhouse. Yeah, Blumhouse Films and the M. Night Shyamalan's, production company, which if you in retrospect, you actually kind of, like, think that this is probably, like, the best collaboration ever, because Jason
Yeah.
Blum or Blumhouse Studios is like known for like their small budgets and kind of small horror films. And M. Night Shyamalan, granted that most of his films have been pretty high budget for what he's used to, but The Visit is his smallest budget to date at $5 million. Like famously, he went on record and said that he mortgaged his house to make this film. And like you always have to love that about creatives, like when they do kind of like these outlandish things to make the thing that they always wanted to make. So, but yeah, what do you think about like this collaboration with Jason Blum and M. Night Shyamalan, Andrew?
I just think like it was just brilliant. Like it's just an obvious collaboration because, like you said, Blumhouse sort of kind of lives in that low budget horror world sometimes. And even though M. Night Shyamalan is a high budget filmmaker now, his films, at least the better ones, always feel like small budget films because they're so, I don't know, I think they're so expertly staged and crafted that it just feels like one of those indie movies, that you love.
Mhm.
But they're really high budget movies, except for, of course, The Visit.
Yeah, it's also very telling too, just because I always believed, like especially when doing this series, is M. Night Shyamalan always feels like ahead of his time, because The Visit came out, he made it for $5 million. Like I said, he mortgaged his house. And right when this is coming out, all these movies are coming out with big budgets and just trying to like one up each other. Like 2015 is like the height of the MCU at this point, and
Yeah, exactly.
everyone's just trying to go big or go home. And now, especially with a film like Anora that just won Best Picture at the Oscars, that also had a
Yeah.
$5 million budget, Sean Baker's on stage like, "Oh, let's make more $5 million films," and I'm like, M. Night Shyamalan was doing this like 10 years ago, so
Yeah.
it it's real funny that how things work in the industry for sure.
Yeah, I kind of think, like you mentioned, he had just come off sort of two unsuccessful films.
Mhm,
And I think maybe he tried this was his grounding, he's like, I'm going back to my roots. This is his wheelhouse.
mhm.
And I think that going back to a lower budget really helped that. It really helps the visit because it just feels more real.
Yeah, it definitely feels more real and, like, not trying to stay on this, like, lower budget thing, but Jason Blum said in, like, multiple interviews that I watched after this film is, like, he loves, like, the smaller budget just because he loves it because it allows, like, creatives to be, like, restricted within their art. And
Yeah.
kind of like to branch off from this a little bit, I had a graphic design instructor in college that kind of preached that to the like, and I still live by this to this day. Like, M. Night Shyamalan mentioned this in one of the interviews too, as well, where like you can have like a big budget all you want and pay for as much, pay for like whatever camera you want to get or whatever actor you want in your film. But it's like when you become restricted, it allows like your ideas to bounce off the walls a little bit more easier and you can kind of see like the picture becomes a lot more clear like basically like when artists become restricted, that's when they start making the most interesting art. So and that's what my design teacher said like numerous times and I still live by to this day. And it's and like you said, like The Visit, it's his lowest budget film like so far in his career, and it's probably one of the more unique and creative films that he has in his filmography for sure.
Oh yeah. I especially I don't know their names, but the two grandparents or fake grandparents actors,
They're just titled in the credits Nana and Pop Pap Pap, which
Nana and
Pop
Pep Pep. I think they really just killed it, pun intended. They were amazing, both of them, and they carried that movie so beautifully.
and I think what also helped like their performance too, and Shyamalan mentioned this in the behind the scenes featurette, is that one of his main goals when casting this movie is that he wanted to cast unknowns. I think casting like unknowns, especially like unknown Australian actors that American audiences aren't necessarily familiar with, it allowed you to pull yourself into this world even more. And Shyamalan even says more than half of the job as a director is casting of the film, and he spent months like casting this film, like looking over audition tapes, and he finally landed on Olivia and Ed as the two children that are making this movie, this movie
Yeah.
about their family. When the story started coming together for me, like for this, it's like about like this, like it's about like Tyler. He's kind of like this young, kind of like aspiring, kind of like entertainer, and the daughter of Catherine Hahn's character, Loretta, Rebecca, is more of the technical kind of like filmmaker like aspect. I'm like, M. Night Shyamalan, you just basically put yourself into these two kids. Like this, like
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. What were you gonna say on that? Or
I was just gonna say, artists almost always put themselves into their art, whether or not they are aware of it, even, So I think he definitely wrote those two kids as two parts of himself, most likely.
yeah, that's the immediate thing that like jumped out at me. But I think like their Olivia and Ed's like performance is just absolutely incredible. And like one of the interesting filming techniques, and when I finish the film, I usually kind of like read a bunch of articles about what this like what kind of people's perception on this movie. And on Letterbox, like the ratings that this film got was like a 3.1 average on Letterbox, which in my opinion should be higher. It should
Oh
be
yeah.
a higher rating. But a lot of people are calling like this film found footage. And yes, like it's about two kids kind of like making their own like film, and it's got like the found footage uh uh But
Yeah.
Jason Blum kind of like described this film almost too perfectly. He described it as kind of like a mock documentary or a mockumentary, just
Yeah,
because
documentary.
Shyamalan, like, he's famous for basically planning out every single shot and how it planning out a film from A to B.
Yeah.
And even though this film is found footage, like, Shyamalan still knew, like, what this film was gonna look like. And I think that's kind of more of like a documentary, like, aesthetic, but it's more of a, like, you kinda get, like, what the camera is putting out there. But Shyamalan still wanted his control, but also he kind of, like, he got his cake and ate it too, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah, and there's plenty of like, quote unquote found footage material in this film, not all of it is found footage.
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of it's like half and half, which makes sense because some of the people that produce this film or also produce Paranormal Activity and
Yeah.
Insidious as well. So it's I just love like the people involved in this movie. It kind of got like the best of both worlds. Like you got kind of like that, like the scariness or the unknown of Paranormal Activity, and then Insidious is probably one of my favorite horror movies of this current generation.
Oh,
You
yeah.
kinda got, like, kind of like that mystery in there and too, and then you got M. Night Shyamalan just kind of like stirring the pot a little bit. And
Yeah, throwing in his twists.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, Andrew, do you have anything else to, like, mention, like, about this film, like, kind of like your initial reactions, like, when you first watched this film? Or
Yeah, I remember my friend Chanel and I went to go see it when it was in theaters. We loved going to see horror movies. So we went immediately because it looked so good. And sort of like you, I was sort of skeptical of it because it was M. Night Shyamalan and because he had come off some unsuccessful films, but maybe it was the low expectations. But I remember being stunned and just thinking that this film was stunning from start to finish because some of the shots are just so terrifying. Like the scenes like in the crawl space under the house and how claustrophobic it gets, like, and you feel it, and like the shot of the Nana like on all fours, like racing in the crawl space, like that was absolutely terrifying. And I just think that he does this like, so I don't know, just he does it in this like close up, like intimate way, makes you fear the intimate.
yeah, I totally agree with you, and like I said, this is like a first time watch, so kinda like my initial reactions watching it at age 35, like, yeah, I'm old. But
Yeah.
but,
Hey, I'm 35 too. You calling me old?
I'm calling myself old. I'm calling myself. But yeah, my first time kind of like experiencing this film is basically I echo your sentiment for like what M. Night Shyamalan was trying to like craft with this film. Kind of threw me a little off guard with like how funny this movie was.
It's so funny.
It's so funny because it reminds me, like, I'm sure all of us, like, we've all visited, like, our grandparents, and that's basically what this film is. It's
Yeah.
basically 2 kids going to see, like, their grandparents, and they're making a film about their family and kind of, like, discovering their history along the way. Uh, that's basically that sums up the movie in a way. But,
Yeah.
but I've we all kind of, like, been or spent the night at, like, houses, especially, like, grandparents' houses that have, especially, like, when you're a young kid and you're spending night in, like, kind of like a foreign place.
Yeah.
It is your family, but it's like this house has, like, weird noises to it, so, like, when you're
Yeah, there's different energy and there's different things going on.
and also you just are like, as a kid, that's when your mind is most creative, so you're kind of, like, going through, like, these scenarios of, like, what it could be. And
Yeah.
I have a specific story because I remember the story pretty vividly, and it actually kind of like ignited it again when watching the visit. We went on this field trip like when I was like in I think it was like fifth or sixth grade to Monterey Bay Aquarium, and like our class spent the night at like this high school. I remember sitting or sleeping in like my sleeping bag. Like my friends and I were kind of like trying to spook like all of our other friends as we look
Yeah.
up the skylight in the gym. And
Yeah.
I remember like the shadowy figure, and people were like, "Oh my god, that's a serial killer on top of the roof." And it turned out to be like this. It turned out to be like nothing. It was like this
Yeah.
shadowy figure, like this tree that was
Yeah.
casting its shadow like through this window. And this movie is kind of like that experience there, where it's like children are just very intensely creative, and they create up scenarios that aren't actually there. Especially Tyler. Tyler does this constantly throughout this film of him like, "Oh, there's something wrong with grandpa and
Yeah.
granddad and grandma." And, the just, like, the scenarios that he kinda, like, draws up in his head is really interesting to me, for sure.
Yeah, one thing I did sort of have mixed feelings about in the movie was the representation of, like, mental health and stuff like that, you know?
Mhm.
Although, you know, it was good information, there was good and true information as far as, sundowning and stuff like that. Like, that stuff really happens to older people, you know? And especially when they are in, dementia or something like that. And maybe depicting them as murderers was a little bit too far, but it also was great.
I'm really glad that you brought this up just because I started feeling really bad, like, about 3/4 of the way through this movie. Like, when they
Yeah.
actually get kind of, like, perceived as murderers by these children and, like, just really bad people. And going off of, like, M. Night Shyamalan's filmography, like, we're halfway through this series. This is M. Night Shyamalan's kind of, like, fetish. I guess should I say fetish in a way? He
I
loves kind of, like, finding disorders in people and kind of, like and kind of running with it. Like, this happens in Split with DID representation. Even, like, in his most, recent film, Trap, where the serial killer in that, played by Josh Hartnett, has, like, this OCD kind of, like, uh,
Yeah, yeah. I
disorder.
loved that movie, by the way, it was amazing.
It's so good. It's so good. We always bring up Trap whenever talking about one of his older films,
But
but
he also does it I guess this doesn't really count, but I would think The Sixth Sense sort of counts in this way a
mhm,
little bit, you know? Maybe a kid with high sensitivity or, something like that, that might
mhm,
be representing them,
like,
even
the autistic kids in a way,
yeah, maybe.
kids that are different and, "Oh, let's play on that." And I don't think he's doing it on purpose,
No.
doing it in a malicious way. He just finds those type of people interesting, like,
Yeah.
more than the average human being, and I think people definitely can get a different reading from that, they could see it as malicious. I think it was a pretty pretty malicious and Split, to be honest, just
Yeah.
turning that community into, like, well, kinda like what he did here, where it's just turning all old people are serial killers. But it's very weird watching The Visit in 2025, where M. Night Shyamalan is saying all old people are scary. I'll just stop it there. I'll just
Yeah. I think he in this movie, The Visit, I don't think he took it too far. He definitely pushed the boundary. He didn't really visualize them murdering anybody or anything like that. They weren't really super violent in any way except for kind of at the end.
Yeah, that's kinda, like, really my only problem is, like, the ending of this movie. I think it's like, we'll get to it, like, a little bit later,
Yeah.
but it kind of felt like he didn't know how to end this movie because you didn't really expect, like, some of the scenes to happen, like, towards the 3rd act, especially, like, some of the interactions with that Rebecca has with Nana, uh,
Yeah.
but I don't know, like, Shyamalan has said, like, the process of, like, making this movie, he sat, like, his like you said, like, this is kind of like the reawakening of Shyamalan, like, after, like, 2 kind of,
Yeah.
like, duds from After Earth and Last Airbender.
Yeah, he's just getting, he's just getting his boots back into it, you know?
Yeah, and he described making this film as kinda like making a puzzle, like he making a puzzle with, like, his youngest daughter, Salika, I think,
I'm not sure.
or Shauna Shyamalan, um, also directed Watchers from last year.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I forgot, yeah.
But he talked about, like, how this film kinda reminds me of making a puzzle, and that's kind of how filmmaking is, where it's just like, "You found a piece, let's run with that. You found another piece, let's run with that." And you're just kind of,
Yeah.
like, putting the puzzle together slowly as and then the picture will eventually, like, come clearer. Hearing that kind of, like, style really made me respect Shyamalan for sure, just because it's like this like you said, it's like it's grounding himself again. It's like, this might be the last opportunity for him to, like, make a movie because he went through hell kind of, like, getting this movie
Yeah.
distributed just because, like, I think he had, like, a rough cut of, like, this film originally, and he sent it out to studios, and no one wanted to watch it. No one wanted to, like, trust him with, like, anything except for Universal. Universal
Yeah.
and Blumhouse. They're like, "Okay, finish the movie first. Finish the movie,
Yeah.
and then we'll take a look at it." And then after they finish the movie, they're like, "You know what? Let's make this thing real." And that's when like, this movie had like I said, this movie had a $5 million budget, and it made, like, its budget back within, like, the first week.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I think Universal was just like, we're gonna rent to own, we're gonna rent to own, we're gonna see, finish the movie,
Mhm,
and then but I think what's so great about this film too is that it's like you said earlier, it's sort of funny and scary. And I think that comes in with, bringing in like familiar tropes like the Hansel and Gretel, like get in the oven type thing,
mhm,
I think when that sort of thing happens, you're like familiar with it. So you kind of want to giggle because you're like, oh God, this is sort of a trope. But then it's like, oh, this is actually kind of scary, And then you're just kind of, whoa, what's happening here? I think it kind of it that's how I reacted, it kind of disoriented me because I didn't know how to feel because I know this trope of Hansel and Gretel, it's no big deal. And then because these actors are so terrifying, I'm suddenly terrified and I didn't know how to feel. And it feels uncomfortable. And I think that is what is so genius about this movie.
yeah, and it's incredibly genius, and, like, Shyamalan, also, like, he had, like, 2 different scripts of this film. He had one that was, like, a straight comedy, and also one that was, like, straight horror. So, like, the 3rd draft of this film was just kind of like a mixture of both, where it's like
That's my favorite horror, to be honest. Like,
mhm,
I don't care how serious you take yourself or how silly you take yourself. Good horror is good horror.
mhm,
So, like, honestly, sometimes the funny horror is where it's at because, like, that is where the most commentary a lot of times on society and public things are happening, Like,
mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with the movie Slacks. Uh,
Um,
it's Slacks
Not
with, I think,
familiar.
3 X's, but it's just about a killer pair of jeans in, like, a Gap or a Cotton On or something, and it's just super ridiculous, but it's also commentary on the slave labor, basically slave labor that they
Mhm,
have in India of these girls picking cotton
mhm.
for these big box companies making jeans. So I think that's where the greatest horror comes in. And I think that's why this movie is so great because maybe it is sort of a commentary on we should take better care of our elderly. We should take better care of their mental health, And then yeah, so I think that's what's so great about it. It's funny and it's scary and it's sort of telling a message.
Yeah, I echo that, like, 100% just because, and I like that you threw in the whole, we need to take better care of our elderly because I think, like, towards the end of this movie, Shyamalan, like that's kind of like what he's saying because like Catherine Hahn's character, we he doesn't really necessarily say like her relationship with like her parents is bad, but you definitely can tell that there's
Yeah,
some
you definitely picked up cues in the beginning
mm,
that she didn't really wanna, like, be around him.
yeah, kind of
Like
like how well I don't know how you are with your family, but it's like whenever I have like a family function, I'm kind of like, well, do I have to do this? It's just kind of like it's like I have other things going on. But not saying that I don't like my family, but it's just like it's become a chore sometime. Especially like with Catherine. Very interesting progression of her character, Catherine Hahn's for the mother.
Yeah.
She sends her kids off so she can go party with cougars on a boat. I don't
Yeah.
know where that came from, to be honest, but I found that real funny. And also, one other thing I like to add about that is like she's sending her kids home movies of her time. And
Yeah, that was really weird too to me, but it was kind of funny too.
can we talk
Uh,
about that a little bit? Like bad parenting? I think so.
maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really funny, and that's why I appreciated it because Catherine Hahn is, such a brilliant comedic
Mother.
actress.
She's mother.
Yeah, definitely mother.
Yeah. But yeah, shall we kind of get into breaking down this movie as best we can?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so this movie starts off I love it when a movie starts off and I'm like, "Okay, I'm in for a ride." It starts off with Tyler rapping. I
Really
think this might be
awfully rapping.
speak for yourself, 'cause it's Ty I'm like, uh, this was definitely a choice, but I think
Yeah.
this sets up, like, the Tyler character as, like I said, Tyler's the entertainer. He wants to be liked. This is this movie came out in 2015, so kind of, like, a little bit at the peak of social media, like, Twitter was popping off, YouTube was obviously kind of like
Snapchat.
yes, I wasn't on Snapchat, never was.
But
I think I was a
that
little
was when that, like, 2015 was, like, Snapchat.
yeah, and then what TikTok wasn't around, it was Musically at that time.
I don't think it
Yeah, but, what do you think about, like, this opening scene of
I think it's just character building, it sets us up to know his character and sort of how he operates, how he thinks, how he presents himself. I think it was just a brilliant way to let us into Tyler's character without it's like showing and not telling. Sometimes these things that seem sort of nonsensical are just character building. For example, the dance scene in the middle of Pulp Fiction, when John Travolta and Uma Thurman are doing that dance, the twist or whatever they're doing, that a lot of people I've heard are like, well, why is that in there? They're not doing anything. It's character building, you know? It's letting you into their being. And I think that's what this scene is for Tyler. You know what you're in for with him right away.
yeah, and you get that same thing with Becca. She's obviously packing, like, her camera equipment, and
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
she's talking about, like, this documentary that she wants because she wants to learn about her family. What does every person that has a family want to know? They want to know more about their family
Yeah.
because knowing about your family history is important.
Yeah,
So
it's just natural.
and she's an aspiring filmmaker, so she's like, "I'm just gonna make it a film."
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just kind of like that dynamic going back and forth, like how we brought up, like, earlier, it's kind of like M. Night Shyamalan, like, the technical side and then the entertainer side, but they're obviously packing for this trip to go see grandma and grandpa. They're off to grandma's house, in like, out in the woods, and, basically, we also get the introduction of Loretta, the mother, played by mother herself, Catherine Hahn. What do you think of we kinda talked about her a little bit already with her going to that trip that she plans on going on, but
Yeah.
She tells her kids, "Oh, you can't go to this. This is a very adult trip." But what do you think of like her character being established here?
I think it's great, because like we mentioned earlier, there aren't so many words that she says that she's uncomfortable being around her parents, but you can tell from
Mhm.
cues. And again, not to like be a broken record, that is all character building. We are getting to know her. We're even getting to know the grandparents, even though,
Mhm.
they turn out otherwise.
Yeah.
We're even getting to know them. So I think M Night Shyamalan is really good and does really great as far as setting up these characters without doing much. Because that this first scene of them packing and stuff like that, it's not very long, you
No.
know. And you don't really get a lot of lines from Catherine Hahn in the beginning, but you get a lot of her personality, a lot of, what she's like, what she doesn't like, that kind of stuff.
Well,
And
and
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I don't think I was even going to say anything. So
Oh,
go ahead.
well, I think that what also like you're right. M Night Shyamalan doesn't necessarily waste any time here, and I think what actually helps out with that, we didn't mention it, but most of this film, like pretty much most of the M Night films, they use a lot of long takes, but I feel like this film particularly uses the most long takes, and just
Yeah,
because like it's using like that found footage documentary format where the character Rebecca is really just holding in on these characters and you're seeing like the emotions come out in real time, and that kind
yeah,
of adds to the authenticity because you're seeing kind of like one the greenness of her film career, like she's
yeah,
obviously learning like with the camera, but also she knows what she's doing as well, so that kind of like allows you to sympathize with that character even more. And I don't know. I just also kind of like we said, like this is like kind of like early social media days, but things are kind of popping off. People are getting going viral, like when they're posting
yeah.
stuff, especially on YouTube for sure. I remember like
Oh
those
yeah.
YouTube days in 2015 or 2013. the, these kids are obviously they're used to stuff like that. So it's interesting kind of like seeing like their personalities kind of like take off from that as well, even though the movie doesn't necessarily show it. But
Yeah, going back to the takes, I think the interesting thing about the long takes is, and even like, especially the long takes that are just like one, like, if I remember, I just watched it last night, but if I remember right, there's that one long sort of, there's a couple like long lingering shots that just kind of slowly zoom in on the Nana
mhm,
a lot, and those, things, that kind of stuff makes you uncomfortable as an audience member, as a viewer, because and it's supposed to do that because the main character, the kids are uncomfortable, you know
mhm,
so I think those long sort of slow scenes that he kind of lingers, because it's because it makes people uncomfortable, especially in the social media sort of craze, where everything is instant gratification. Let's move on to the next thing, now the next thing, now the next thing, you
mhm.
know so it was brilliant for him to take that time for these shots, because it delays that instant gratification, which makes us uncomfortable. It's Yeah, I loved that about this movie.
Yeah, I love like the sense of being uncomfortable like throughout this film, but kind of moving across like Loretta obviously is like driving like Becca and Tyler to the train station,
Mm.
and she gives them one strict rule like when visiting grandma and grandpa, and and this is kind of like the rule that the film kind of goes back to and keeps the audience kind of like, okay, I'm gonna keep an eye on these characters and make sure that they don't do this thing, and that's under no circumstances do they go into the basement, which pretty easy rule for me because it's like if I'm going to any stranger's house or any like family member's house, I'm not going to the basement. Like, stay out of the basement, kids. But as any
I
like
mean,
as
I grew up in Southern California, and so there were no basements at anybody's house.
Well, this one takes place in South Philly, like most of his
Yeah.
movies, but well, rural Pennsylvania. I think he shot out in rural Pennsylvania at this at the house that he bought with his own money. But yeah, that's the one rule that Loretta gives is like, hey, don't go into creepy grandma and grandpa's basement. Stay out of there. But other than that, be safe, kids. Have fun.
Yeah.
Grandma and
Yeah.
grandpa is fun. But I love that they're getting back on the train. It kind of like calls back to M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable.
Unbreak.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Lee, don't derail this train. And whatever you do, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe Tyler and Becca want superpowers. Maybe that's in the sequel."
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, anything you want to call out here with them kind of like taking the train, kind of like harkens back to kind of like taking the train to grandma's house, like
Yeah,
Amtrak
I
specifically.
think it still just sort of speaks to him regrounding himself, going back to
Mhm,
his roots, going back to Unbreakable, going back to a Sixth Sense or a Village sort of vibe. Even Signs. Signs
mhm,
was the one I was gonna say. Signs is another brilliant, brilliant film from him. And it has that sort of feel too because of the farmhouse kind of feel and sort of like looking around the corner type of feeling that Signs has. And I think that that just goes back, the train, it's he's grounding himself. He wants to get back in his groove.
mhm. Yeah, for sure. This is a new era for Shyamalan, but also, like you said, he's grinding himself. Not to keep repeating ourselves,
Yeah,
but
I hate to be a broken record.
right. But yeah, Becca and Tyler arrive at their grandparents' remote house in Pennsylvania. Nana and Pop Pop, which I love that that's what they're credited as in the movie. I think that's really
And I
cool.
am pop up.
They're greeted warmly by them, but when you first kind of meet them, it kind of gave me Get Out vibes in a way, where it's like
Definitely.
where it's Shyamalan just saying like, "Oh, these people are nice, but you should side eye them."
Did
It's
Get
like
Out come when did Get Out come out? When did that
2017,
2017. Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't out that soon. And I was yeah, 2017. Yeah, it did kind of get out vibes, like almost like maybe they were I remember when I first saw it, I thought maybe that they were like possessed or something.
Mhm.
That was like my first guess because they just felt really, I don't know, canned,
Well,
like everything was so perfect and nice and wonderful and yeah.
Well, it especially watching this film for the first time in 2025, it's giving, how do I say this in the nicest way possible? It's giving that it's giving 2016 vibes in a way. Let's go visit, grandma and grandpa. They're nice, but, um, they want to make a certain thing great again. You understand where I'm
I
going now?
totally understand where you're going.
Yeah. So it kinda gave me those vibes, like, for sure, where it's just like, they're still family, but just make sure you don't bring up certain things at the dinner table, okay? So,
Yeah, yeah,
for sure, it gives you those vibes, like, you're greeted warmly, but you're side-eye along the way. But, basically, Tyler and Becca, they get to their house, they're filming, like, the entire time, and, just a shout out, like, I know you already shouted out already, but, like, this film's just filmed beautifully. Like, it's but you also kind of, like, get, like, the authenticity, like I mentioned, of that it's Becca kinda, like, filming, like, the whole thing, and sometimes Tyler too. It's not necessarily, like, so polished, but you can definitely tell that, like, these kids are filming it for sure, even though they most likely aren't actually filming, like, this movie, but you definitely get that for sure.
yeah. I had a thought, and then now it's gone in 2
Well,
seconds.
it's fine. But yeah, we then get to the first evening, seemingly normal. Nana cooks dinner and they all eat together. And then Tyler starts rapping all of a sudden. And oh crap, did you join again? Hold on, pause. Okay, so now we get into this first dinner scene, like Becca and Tyler being introduced by Nana's like cooking, and then Tyler starts making another attempt at rapping, and the grandparents are like, it's kind of like the grandparents kind of their reaction is like, this is weird, but he's unique for sure. So it's
Yeah.
like that reaction for sure. But what do you think about this sequence here?
The dinner scene, I think, I don't know. Again, like I don't need to be a broken record, but the awkwardness of like almost every scene in this movie just makes that tension. It just makes that tension at a perfect it's like perfect, like where you're not quite sure that it's gonna break yet, but it's at that you're like you're stretching it. And I think that's what I love about this scene. Like, it's just you know that there's maybe something wrong, but it's not you're not quite putting it on there, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And also just you get more of Tyler rapping too. I like the
A little bit unfortunate, but okay. No, I'm
yeah.
joking.
Oh, it's unfortunate, but it's all
It like honestly, it makes me laugh every time because the kid, he's just so adorable doing it. Like you can't hate him at all.
yeah. It's impossible to hate like this character, and I think that also kind of like goes back to like Shyamalan wanted unknowns. Like if this were
Yeah.
like someone like Tom Holland, like when he was younger, it wouldn't hit the same. That it hits more because we don't necessarily know who this person is, so you kind of
Yeah.
see it more as a real person. But
Yeah.
see them more as a real person.
What was so great about, The Sixth Sense, we got Haley Joel Osment, who was basically unknown. I think he was unknown. And then you have this kid who's just has this brilliant performance, and it just captivates the whole audience.
Well, I live like especially after this movie, Olivia DeJonge, she's Priscilla in the newest Elvis movie, which
Oh, right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
something I forgot to mention, but kind of worth bringing up. And then I don't really know Ed Oxenbould. He hasn't really done anything like current recently. Not that it's all kind of like animated stuff and just kind of like obscure animated
Yeah.
stuff. That not
He's a
real.
kid, you gotta remember he's a kid too, so, he might be focusing on school, so he only kinda does, you know, vocal acting here and there
Yeah,
to get some money, but he probably has, like, friends that he wants to, like, be with and, like, kinda still stay semi-normal without being a big total celebrity. Well, I
yeah.
guess it's been 10 years now, but, early on, he probably wanted to stay, kind of more anonymous.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, and then we get into the first night
Ooh.
where they start hearing noises. And this is kind of like when Tyler's imagination kind of like runs a little bit. Um what do you think of like the well actually it's Becca that hears the noises downstairs and then Tyler and her start to investigate. What do you think of like this like when they start hearing the noises? Like what it really this is when I feel like for me, the film really turns into like a very paranormal activity, but actually better than those movies. Like
Oh,
I love kind of like the stuff that he pulls M. Night Shyamalan pulls from those movies to put in this movie for sure.
yeah, he definitely there are definitely a lot of paranormal activity references, but that first scene where you're just hearing they're just hearing those loud thumps outside,
Mhm.
and I don't know, it's terrifying. I think, like, if that something like that ever happened to me, I would literally like run into a corner and crawl into a ball and cry, like I would not want to go out there.
Mhm.
uh that scene is really good. I really love it.
Yeah, and I love the way Nana just tries to write it off and just like, "It's an old house. It's fun. Don't worry. It's just
Yeah.
settling. You're just quite you're hearing things. You're hearing things." And
Yeah.
that's like before we start. Like you said, we knew there was something off from this
Yeah.
from then.
Started
And
turning into a horror movie.
yeah, for sure. But yeah, Then hold on, I'm just looking at my notes real quick. But yeah, but then the next day, Nana insists on making a huge breakfast. Her behavior seems a little overly enthusiastic and energetic. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of a little bit of like just old people a little bit trying too hard to be liked in the situation because I know that they're not really fitting in very well, like, with these kids. I like these kids kinda see them as not kind of very awkward, so they kinda a little bit try a little bit too hard. But, what do you think about, like, this next day of, Nana making breakfast? So
Yeah, I think I remember being just really like, this is odd. And this is like, I think it was good because you kind of are like, well, is there something wrong or not? You kind of like, you can tell there's still something off with them, but you're kind of like, well, maybe that was just normal or something different. Or maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was some sort of monster that's living in the basement or something, because the mom said, don't go in the basement. So, I think there are still a lot of things that your mind can sort of explain away first for that first night. So the next day you're like, okay, well, maybe they're okay, but maybe there's something else going on.
and another movie that I kind of started, like, it started appearing in my mind when watching this movie as well, is it reminded me a lot of Coraline too, especially, like, this elderly
Oh,
couple being overly nice and just and Becca and Tyler kind of feeling a little bit at home, but also a little bit, at ease as well, and also just the way Shyamalan uses color too. Like, whenever, the grandma and grandpa were being, like, overly nice, the colors started kinda were more vibrant, and
yeah.
obviously at night, everything was a lot more darker and kind of, like, gray, and you weren't necessarily, like, sure what was gonna happen next. I love the way Shyamalan plays with colors in most of his films, but this one, I think, like, he he uses it exceptionally well.
Yeah, especially because, it's like at a farm in the winter, and the farm is like old, you
Mhm.
know, and or I don't know if it's a farmer or whatever it is. It's a lot of land and big house. And um where is I going with this? Anyway, yeah, the house. Where was I going with that, Mark?
Well, no, it's like it's very like,
Oh, yes.
he sets the mood for sure.
Yeah. Okay, now I remember. There aren't a lot of colors for him to work with, but he still finds the little tiny ways, in clothes or items in the kitchen or, something like that to make the those colors pop.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Like, it goes back to, like, how what we are saying, like, when you're limited as a creative, like, he's limited with color, he's limited with budget,
Yeah.
he still found ways to, like, work his way to make, like, this film work, and, that's something you have to admire, especially as a creative myself, and yourself too, Andrew.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, moving on, Tyler and Becca decide to play hide and seek. This is the scene where, you said that you were freaking out, like, when you
Yeah.
first watched this in theaters, where
Yeah.
they're
It made me
crawling around
very
in the crawl space, so
Yeah, I just I haven't had a lot of experience with crawl spaces,
mhm,
so just the idea of them kind of freaks me out because I don't like small spaces at all.
mhm,
And so when they were playing tag in there, I was even before it turned scary, I was just very uncomfortable
yeah.
because you felt that claustrophobia, I kind of felt like I was in a small space, even though I was in a big theater.
Yeah, and, the theater can be pretty small, it can be a confined space, and that kind of, like I would love to kind of, like, have this experience, like, in the theater just because as much as I hate jump scares in horror movies, I feel like the jump scares, especially, like, in this scene, Shyamalan used them effectively here.
Yeah.
Even though, like there's especially in a movie like Trap and a movie like this, I find them to be very similar just because there's a lot of um like suspension of disbelief that you got to use. Like
Yeah.
you have to like wonder like why is the grandma running around in the basement like and like playing tag with them and just like it you just kind of like surrender yourself to the movie and just kind of like accept it at this point. That's what Shyamalan wants to do. But what do you think about like just the believability of like the Nana crawling around in this basement with them?
I think that's what sort of makes it so frightening, you know? It feels like she's more of a monster because, you know, you wouldn't think she would be able to do that. So it sort of turns the dial immediately about, you know, how you feel about the Nana.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, but after this hide and seek, the kids are obviously freaked out and they're very suspicious of what is going on with grandma. And but they immediately dismiss it as just they're just old. Like they're
Huh.
just which I love. I also love it like when they call their mom on Skype, which by the way, another thing to add, probably the best Skype connection that I've seen ever.
Yeah, a very unrealistic Skype connection.
Yes, like that's like 4K up in here. I'm like it's very uh
R.I.P. Skype.
yeah, RIP Skype for sure. Skype's still around, isn't it?
I think no, I think Microsoft got rid of like Skype, like the brand technically, and it's something else. They've
Oh,
rebranded it.
it's Microsoft Teams, I think. I
Yeah,
think you're right.
yeah.
But yeah, RP Skype. But yeah, very unrealistic connection there. But like that's when their mom basically says like they're just old. Don't worry about it. I love that kind of like of her just comforting like her children because she's so far away at this point.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not like there's much that she can do at that point.
yeah,
You know, if
but
she's in the middle of the ocean.
yeah, and it's it's I don't know. I just like that connection that we constantly have with like the
Especially in the middle of the ocean, like she's in the middle of the ocean
yeah.
and she has that perfect connection,
uh,
that perfect internet connection.
She got that 5G. It's not the extra 5G connection. 2015, 2013 when this movie was filmed. That was like 4G. Was it 4G at that time?
I think 2013 was 4G.
Yeah. Uh,
2015, I think 5G was just barely coming out.
yeah. They're still building the towers and they're still making the COVID shot or no,
Yes.
go
The
there.
towers are still spreading the coronavirus.
Yeah, exactly.
The 5G
We're already
towers.
canceled at this point. But yeah, um, is there is but yeah, they obviously increasing suspicion throughout this movie. That's the kind of like the overwhelming theme. But yeah, is there anything else do you want to bring up? Like,
The ending, yeah, the ending where you said, you know, it kind of felt like he didn't know how to end it. You
yeah,
know, I don't know, there's something about that rings true to me, but I honestly don't I can't really put my finger on why. So I'm maybe asking you why you think that.
see, the thing about the ending for me, it just kind of I didn't necessarily expect Becca to actually like kill her grandma at the and it felt a little like, obviously, the way that she kills her, like, she kinda kills it with the thing that she loves, like, the most, like her equipment, but
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. It's a very interesting standoff, especially just, like 'cause I think she mainly did it out of fear. It
Yeah.
kinda left me scratching my head for sure, just because, like, the entire time, like, I was thinking, like, "Oh, this is just, like" I expected, like, this movie to be where Catherine Hahn's character, like, comes back, and it's, like, this crazy story that the ki
Oh, I get it. Like you kind of just feel like it ended out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like they were having this big sort of climax, and then all of a sudden it was over.
Yeah, it's all within the kid's head.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, I think yeah, I think I remember watching it with my partner, and he did not like the ending at all. And it was because she didn't kill the grandma sooner.
Right.
He was like, you know, she's a grandma. Like, just kill her, like, and run away. And he sort of gets frustrated sometimes when it's like, this is the obvious thing to do. You should be doing it. Why aren't you doing it? You know? So like when this grandma is like trying to kill you, obviously, why aren't you just killing her so that way she doesn't kill you? So he gets sort of mad at those sorts of things. But I get what you're saying, where it just kind of ended. We didn't get any resolution with Catherine Hahn's character and her real parents. Did we even I don't think we even got to see what was in the basement.
No, I think that's all left up to mystery a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, we still kind of like, the basement was still off limits, and we still don't
But
know what was
what
down there.
I don't understand is, how is there a basement and a crawl space? Maybe
Don't make
maybe
her
the
magic.
crawl space is only under part of the house, and the basement, maybe the basement's just small.
Yeah, I think
Who
that's also
knows?
just filmmaker magic too, where you just kinda
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier at the start of the podcast, that the fact that this movie ends with Becca and Tyler killing their grandparents because, like, whether they have, a disease like Alzheimer's or some sort of disorder, and they turned out to the grandparents turned out to be, like, creepy, murderous psychopaths.
Well, I mean,
Really
they weren't their real grandparents.
yeah, well, true, but still, you kinda have
They
that connection.
killed the real grandparents.
Yeah, that's true, but it's just, it's I don't know, it's just, it's still but they still kinda have that resemblance of
Yeah, I also feel like, endings is a thing. Endings for M. Night Shyamalan is something that he struggles with. I think sometimes, not always, but like a lot of his endings can be just kind of like, oh, it's over, As brilliant as The Village is, I think that's one of those instances where the ending could have been better. I think he just struggles with endings, and you know what? I think the ending to this is fine, I guess. I would have, like you said, I would have loved a resolution with Catherine Hahn's character about her real parents and like what's the beef there.
mm,
But that wasn't the story that he wanted to tell.
yeah, for sure.
He wanted to tell the children's story. He wanted to tell their story, not, their mom's story.
Yeah, and most importantly, he wanted to tell, like, from their perspective too, and
Yeah.
that's why he did it from, like, this documentary, mockumentary, format. But yeah, like we mentioned, this movie ends with, Tyler and Becca kind of, like, prevailing over the fake grandparents, and, the police arrive and secure the house, and Becca and Tyler are reunited with their mother, and they share, like, this embrace, and another I think that all that's very kind of, like, touching and, like, sweet, and Catherine Hahn, obviously, we're gonna be we're praising Catherine Hahn throughout this entire
Yeah.
episode, as we should, because she's mother, but, I think the most interesting part of this movie is when Becca, is kind of, like, reviewing the footage and, kinda, like, seeing, like, everything that they went through.
Yeah.
It it kind of, like, maybe it's on the tip of my tongue, but maybe you can help me out with this. It's almost very, thematic on, like, what an actual filmmaker does, like, when they review, like, the footage and kind of, like, seeing all the
Oh,
experience
yeah.
and put
Yeah.
in, but anything you wanna add to that? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it mirrors when everything's said and done, you want to sit down and watch what you filmed,
Mhm.
before editing, before all the hoopla. And I
Yeah.
think yeah, I did like that part, because that is something you would do.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, not really much to add about this film because like the thing that I do love about this film, and I feel like the thing that makes it work so well is that one, it's very repetitive. Like you meet like the grandparents, and you kind of have like these awkward like encounters and very scary encounters, and it continues that like throughout the entire film as you're discovering like more information, and as these kids are kind of like discovering more of the story, you're discovering
Mhm.
more along like with these kids, and you kind of it's kind of repetitive, but I think that's why I like it so much is because it feel this movie feels lived in, the fact that
Yeah.
it's so
I think that's
I,
what I was trying to that's what the word I was trying to use earlier, I think.
mhm,
Lived not phrase, I guess, lived in. That's what I was trying to get at when I was trying to be like, indie. It feels homey. It feels homemade almost,
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it definitely feels like a home movie for sure, and just because of the documentary and mockumentary format, and I also just love that this movie is it's very linear too. Like
yeah,
it's basically it starts at the beginning of the week and ends at the end of the week,
yeah,
and each title card is kind of like represented by this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday, this is
yeah,
Thursday, and that's it. Kind of like it allows you to just kind of like live in this movie along with the characters and kind of live with them in real time. And I think that definitely helps with like the tension of this movie and like where you're at like with these characters. But yeah,
yeah,
um not necessarily my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. I think it's up there pretty strong, but
yeah.
I think it's still a great horror movie, and I
I would
kind of like
agree.
the balance. I still love the balance that M. Night Shyamalan has. Any final thoughts that you have on this movie, The Village?
Yeah, The Visit. That's what we're talking about, right? Yeah, no, I just think this is, I just love this movie and it's one of my top it's not like I said, like you said, I agree with you. It's not my top, film from him, but it's definitely up there.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah. But yeah, that's The Visit from 2015. Since we don't really have anything else to mention, Andrew, this is part. Thank you for this conversation
Oh, of
on The
course,
Visit.
anytime.
Yeah, this is
Anytime, anytime.
yeah, this has been real fun. This is part of the show where you get to tell um uh the listeners where they can find you.
Well, because of the recent political climate, I have gotten rid of most of my social media, but you can find me on Blue Sky, Neon Fruit, FROOT, like Fruit Loops. Actually, I don't think they spell it like that. But anyway, yeah, FROOT, Neon Fruit at bluesky.social.
Yeah,
Oof.
definitely give Andrew a follow over on Blue Sky. Blue Sky's really popping off lately. It feels like
I love
all
it.
social
It's
media.
Twitter without the Nazis.
Yes, that's definitely a plus.
Maybe you should do an Indiana Jones next, Jones retrospective, so we can talk about punching Nazis.
Yeah, because everyone was punching Nazis. But definitely follow Andrew on Blue Sky. The link will be in the description. And if people aren't bored of me by the end of this podcast, hopefully you're not. But you can follow me pretty much. I'm still on social media, even though the recent political climate. I'm on TikTok, whatever, if that perhaps banned or not or whatever. I don't even know. Not really on there all that much, but the main places are Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube with the username at Marley Loves Film. And then you can also listen to podcasts anywhere where you listen to podcasts with the Real Lovers podcast on YouTube as well, Pocket Casts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. That's been our discussion on The Visit from 2015. The next film in our M. Night Shyamalan retrospective is I don't even have it pulled up in my notes. Let me just scramble. Is the 2016 film. He came back pretty quickly right after The Visit with Split, and that Shyamalan Split, another Jason Blumhouse collaboration with James McAvoy's Split. But Andrew, it's been lovely talking The Visit with you. But with that being said, my name is Marley Silverbrand for the Real Lovers podcast, and
I'm Andrew. film lover.
And let's get back to the movies, Andrew.
All right. See ya.
Okay.